Hi, today we're going to be talking about the ablative absolutes, which is a construction in Latin, which is made up of a participle in the ablative and a noun and a pronoun in the ablative. So when they are paired together, they describe an action which is independent from the rest of the clause. So if we take this sentence, for example, miles ad aciem festinavit, gladio rapiente. So we've got our main clause here, and I'll just underline that first to make that clear. So we've got our main clause, miles ad aciem festinavit. Kind of struggling with controls a little bit. So that means the soldier rushed to the battle line. And then we've got our noun here in the ablative, gladio. So the nominative would be gladium, and this goes to the ablative with the O ending. And then rapiente is our participle. So this is a present participle, and we put that into the ablative with the E ending, from rapiens to rapiente, and together that becomes an independent unit from the rest of the sentence. So seizing his sword, that's how you translate the present participle. So the full translation of this sentence would be the soldier rushed to the battle line, and then translating the present participle would be while seizing his sword. In another example, just below, we've got Kaiser, his dictis milites dimisit. So again, we've got the ablative absolute right in the middle here. If I can underline it. There we go. So his dictis now is using a pronoun instead of a noun. So his is from hic, haec, hoc, meaning this. So hic would be the masculine singular, haec feminine singular, and hoc the neuter singular. And so his is ablative plural, and so dictis, our perfect passive participle in this instance, has to agree in case, number, and gender with his, so it is also ablative masculine plural. So these are agreeing in the ablative absolute construction. So here we've again got the main clause, which is Kaiser milites dimisit, and I'll underline that in a different colour. Kaiser milites dimisit, and so that means Caesar sent these soldiers away. And the his dictis, as we've mentioned earlier, demarcates something that has sort of happened independently of the rest of the clause. So here it literally means with these things having been said. So perhaps in more natural English you might say when he had said these things or after he had said these things. So to summarise the full sentence, it would be Caesar, when he had said these things or after he had said these things, sent away the soldiers. So again, the ablative absolute kind of happening independently of the rest of the sentence. And when I see ablative absolutes in prose or poetry in kind of full lengths of text, I like kind of bracketing them off because they are independent. Finally, we might also encounter adjectives also agreeing with the noun or pronoun in the ablative absolute construction, and that's perfectly normal. That kind of happens quite a lot. So in this final example here, we have again our main clause. No, we're going to use the yellow still. Coquus quiescebat, so the cook was having a rest. And then again, ablative absolute here. So cana is our noun. Oops. Cana is our noun, and that is in the ablative. And then parata is our perfect passive participle, and that's also in the ablative. And then optima is also in the ablative, but this is an adjective and it's agreeing with cana, and that is perfectly okay too. So that all in all means the dinner which had been prepared, the dinner having been prepared, and the dinner adjective optima is excellent. So perhaps in better, smoother English, we might say, the excellent dinner which had been prepared, or when the excellent dinner had been prepared, the cook had a rest. So that's a quick summary of how the ablative absolute works in practice. There are also different ways that we can translate the ablative absolute, so there are 5 in total. The first one being temporal. For example, in the sentence, Patre interfecto rex erratus erat. And when we translate this in a temporal way, a lot of this is context dependent, so it might change depending on the rest of the passage we might be reading. But out of context it's a bit harder, but for speculation's sake we could say, if we translate this in a temporal way, we might say when or after the father had died, the king was angry. So it just tells us a kind of temporal sense of when the ablative absolute has happened or is happening. Similarly, if we use the same example, we might translate it in a causal sense. So because the father had been killed, or since the father had been killed, the king was angry. So again, this is context dependent. If there was reason for particular reason for the king to be angry, we might choose the causal over the temporal, but both are fairly interchangeable. Sorry, I meant since there. Okay, and then next we have concessive, so I will use a slightly different example here. Rex lightus erat. So in a concessive sense, we would translate this as although or even though. So here we would perhaps translate this as even though the father had been killed, the king was happy. So this is a kind of unexpected result, so we might translate this as concessive instead. Next we have conditional uses of, or translations of the ablative absolute. We'll use this example again, but this time we usually see the main clause being in the future, because the thing in the ablative absolute is a kind of conditional, postulated event. So it suggests if this happens, then this will happen, hence the future tense erit instead of the imperfect erat as we've been seeing so far. So conditional just kind of means if. Here we might translate this as if the father had been killed, the king will be happy. Lastly, we have accompanying circumstance, and this is a slightly more obscure translation of the ablative absolute, so I'll use a completely different example here. Natus est Augustus consulibus Cicerone et Antonio. I say it's more obscure, but it is quite logical too. So here this whole sentence means Augustus Natus est was born, and then this all is an ablative absolute with Cicero and Antony being consuls. So the accompanying circumstance is just something that's happening at the same time as the event in the main clause. So sort of with or while this is happening. So that's a quick summary of the ablative absolutes. Do let me know if you have any questions. But apart from that, I hope that all made sense. Thank you.